Hello, friends. My name is Host Eric. I am the host of Talking with Famous People, and this is an important video, in my opinion. I believe it to be the most significant video I've made in a long time in terms of progress on the cognating about cognition. This is the first in a series of such important videos where I go over some things that all fell into place kind of for me recently, kind of this morning. Specifically, let's think about cognition as a set of epistemologies, of ways of knowing things. I can know this is sharp by poking myself with it until it hurts, or I can know it's sharp by looking at it and noting that it's sharp, or I can know it's sharp by reading something about these things that tells me they're sharp, or I can know they're sharp by remembering that time before when I saw somebody else stab themselves with it, or there's a lot of different ways I can know it's sharp. Those are epistemologies. They're also the same sort of thing that cognitive functions are, except cognitive functions answer one of three questions. They either tell us what kind of knowledge we're evaluating as significant, or it tells us how we are doing that evaluation, what metric we're using, or it's telling us where we act upon the conclusions that we draw. So, in order to understand this model correctly, I believe you have to begin with the number one division of all, which is the division between metaphysics and physics. In other words, are you focused primarily on meaning, or are you focused primarily on experience? And for intuitives, we're focused primarily on meaning. For sensory types, they're focused primarily on experience. Each of the cognitive functions is either a metaphysical or a physical function. Metaphysical functions, they convert data into meaning. The physical functions convert meaning into data. And what I mean by that is, let's look first at the types of knowledge. So, NI and SI are the two types of knowledge. It's introverted intuition and introverted sensing. Introverted sensing keeps track of experiences that have happened, meanings that are already determined and set and turned into firm objects, unchanging. Things that have been completed, things that have been planned and decided but not yet done, checking off that list of shit that's been accomplished. All that stuff is SI, introverted sensing. That's physical knowledge. We have to, in order to cognate, have some things stay put. SI is one way that we have things, is one manner in which things stay put. They happened, they're concrete, they're defined, they don't wiggle around. Today I didn't use, there was a time that I broke my finger here, or I broke my hand by bending this finger all the way back. And that doesn't ever change. This bone did break. It never turns out that later on it was this bone actually. SI wants it to not change at all. Introverted sensing does. Does that mean it actually never changes? No, but that's the idea of knowledge from introverted sensing manner of thing. Introverted intuition is the same thing, but it's about meanings. So it's about the obvious truth of things. It's what causes philosophers to believe that objects might have an essence. This is a cup because it is. That's what a cup is. It's not something else. This is to drink out of. Why? Well, because it is. That's what it's for. I could explain why it's useful for that purpose. I could explain a lot of different things about it, but the reality is it's a cup because it is, and that's it. Okay, that's introverted intuition tells us the meaning of things before we do any work on them. SI tells us what is or is not before we do any work. Things that are already decided one way or the other, either intuitively or on a sensory level. So that's knowledge. If you have an NI above an S in your stack, then you are an intuitive, and you are somebody who's focused on the inherent truths of things first and foremost, if you are dominant, or as a means of using a tool if it's in the second slot. Okay, so those are types of knowledge. Normally we contrast NI with NE, but that's not actually how it works. It's better to contrast it with SI because they're both types of knowledge, and that's where the metaphysical-physical split happens. Now let's look at evaluatory mechanisms. FE, TE, they're both physical. No, I'm sorry. FE is the metaphysical form of feelings. FI is the physical form of feelings. TE is the physical form of thinking. TI is the metaphysical form of thinking. So if you're FETI, it means you're metaphysical in your judgments. If you are FITE, it means you're physical in your judgments. And it really means you prioritize those first. That's how you first default to as a evaluatory metric. What do I mean by evaluatory metric? I'm saying if I'm evaluating something on TI grounds, introverted thinking grounds, I'm evaluating it with consistency against either what's the meanings that are inherently true, NI, or what I already know from the world, SI. And that's so if I am doing an introverted thinking consistency test on stuff and I use NI, I'm going to test it against the obvious truths of things. If somebody's arguing that this is useful for lots of different things, the NI person will say, okay, but if we use it for that, we destroy its usefulness as a cup. And it's first and foremost a cup. That's an NI style argument. It's reminding the person that you've gotten so far away from the obvious truth of things that your meanings are pointless. If you were to evaluate TI on an NE level, it's a much different ballgame. Anyway, so TI checks against consistency, TE checks against effectiveness, FI checks against personal valuing. How much do I like this? Do I care? So if I want to use this cup for something other than a cup purpose and it's going to cause it to become useless as a cup, then the question becomes, I need to evaluate on a metric of, do I care? Do I value this cup enough to care that I'm damaging it? Oh yeah, that's good stuff. Do you value your viewing experience enough to turn that off because I farted right there? Could you hear it even? I don't even know. But assuming you didn't turn it off, then that means your introverted intuition may have agreed with you that it was inconsiderate of me as a video maker. Or you may have thought, your FE may have said, oh, that's a bad social move on his part, and it makes me cringe on his behalf. FE does that. It evaluates things in terms of status, hierarchy, positioning socially, and stuff like that. That doesn't mean FE is not actually concerned with the well-being of others. It is, because the concern for the well-being of others is implicit to being perceived well. And of course, if you have FE higher up in the stack, if you have extrovert feeling as one of your dominant functions, then you're very intimately familiar with FI as well in one degree or another. So when we're talking about this metaphysical physical division, then we first have divided on knowledge, then we've gone to the evaluatory metric. Am I choosing to evaluate this knowledge in terms of its consistency, in terms of its effectiveness, in terms of its social impact, or in terms of how it makes me feel, in terms of how much I value it? And those will go in a certain order. So I might think it's inconsistent, therefore I'm going to attack it. Yeah, but people won't like me. Yeah, but it's inconsistent is more important. So that's why I tend to do things that are FE iffy, but are TI correct. And then my FE has to clean up the mess afterwards and goes, okay, it's time for an apology video. Why? Well, because I'm evaluating it in terms of FE, social impacts, and in terms of its effectiveness, TE, compared to some sort of larger goal of what I want. And as a consequence, I feel the need to take further action. Now, we've done the evaluatory metric, let's say. We've used one of those metrics, either metaphysical, TI, or FE, or physical, FI, or TE, and we have determined that this is a good idea or a bad idea based on that evaluatory metric. Now, what kind of action we take is going to be determined by NE or SE. If we are NE, we're going to take metaphysical action, like I do. So, since I'm NE in the dominant slot, I'm taking metaphysical action right now. This is the perfect example of what it means to have NE in the dominant slot and SE in the 8th slot. It means I'm always prioritizing metaphysical action over physical action. And how does that manifest? It manifests like this. I got a piece of mail in the mailbox today. in the morning. It was from yesterday actually, but I didn't check the mail yesterday. I looked in there to reached in and looked at it, and it was to Brooke Finney. Brooke Finney is a woman, I'm assuming, who lived here before me. I know she lived here before me because I've been getting mail for her for the past 20 years. Yep, I still get mail for her, and I moved in here 20 years ago. So, I don't know what's up with that. But regardless, that piece of mail getting, for me, did not result in any sort of physical action. I didn't throw the letter away, even though that's where it belongs. I put it back in the mailbox because I had no use for it, and I proceeded to take metaphysical action upon it. What does that mean? Well, I started thinking about how interpreting that single physical event through the framework of the ideas that I explained through these in this YouTube channel, this format that enables me to engage in continual metaphysical action without ever actually doing much physical action at all, that causes me to think about that physical event in a certain framework, namely what it means to encounter small physical events like that and take metaphysical action upon them. Thus, I am aware, metacogniting about my own tendency to take metaphysical action and using this event as an example to understand that better. So then from that point forward, I drove all the way from here to work thinking about how that event collapsed this massive superposition of meaning events once I made the connection between the piece of mail and the YouTube channel. Why? Because I received letters from her for 20 years, but I never really talked about it or thought about it or cared, and it had no impact on anything. It was all uncollapsed superposition meanings. Lots of possible meanings I could have made about that. I could have made a meaning about like the transience of life and how bittersweet it is that one day you're here and the next day somebody else is getting mail from you 20 years from now. I just would have made that meaning haphazardly, but that wasn't the way this went. That's not the primary meaning this event collapsed to. Instead, it collapsed primarily to the meaning of, oh, this is a perfect example of how I am stuck taking metaphysical action all the time on things and not physical action, and how deeply and farly and completely I'm removed from the physical world. That for me, getting a piece of junk mail to somebody, not me, addressed to somebody who lived here before me, results in none of the sensible responses. The sensible responses would be tell the mail, say doesn't live here anymore, attach a post-it note to the letter and put it back in the mailbox for the mailman to take away. And then maybe I wouldn't have received 20 years worth of letters if I had done that in the first spot, first occasion I had to. Or failing to do something solvency oriented like that, I could just throw it away and have it deal with it, have it be dealt with already now. Instead, I put it back in the mailbox and spend the next drive and all of this time and class time relating that to what I'm currently thinking of, and making that single small physical event have massive metaphysical impact, despite the fact that it's not for any reasons inherent to that. And I would tell me that's not a significant event. And he says, well, let's make it one. As he goes, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Throw the thing away. As a consequence, I've become the man I am now, which is to say somebody who has extreme metaphysical accountability. Extreme metaphysical accountability. I'm the most metaphysically accountable person in the world. If I'm late, you say, you're late. My response is always, you're right, and I have no good excuse for it. I was actually just screwing around at home. I'm so sorry I'm late. It's not okay for me to do that. I will, if you feel as though my lateness has cheated you in some fashion, I'd be happy to try to make that up to you by staying late or something like that. That's being metaphysically accountable. Now, the last bit, saying I can stay late to make it up to you, that's being physically accountable. But for most things, I use extreme metaphysical accountability to avoid any physical accountability for things. So, it drives women crazy. Eric, you left your boxers on the floor again. I know, sweetie. I'm so sorry about that. I shouldn't do that. That's my bad. You have told me to stop that before, and I have acknowledged it before, and so this makes it just worse. My bad. Sorry. Okay, so are you going to stop doing it? Probably not. Why not? You agree that you should stop. Yeah. If I remember, I'll not do it. If I remember and don't feel rebellious in the moment. That's not a good enough answer, Eric. That's what I got for you. You want me to lie? I don't know. It's like as though I don't understand that it's important to be basically they're complaining about something because they want me to change, not because they want me to admit that I'm wrong. On the other hand, I don't ever need anybody to change anything except their metaphysical accountability. I don't care what actually happens. I just care that we agree who's right and wrong about it. Based on if conditionally right or wrong about it. I don't care about the physical impacts of things. I only care about whether it's conditionally right or wrong, pending further information, and whether we agree on that process. All of my fights with women, with anybody in the world, are always about how we're fighting, never about what it is we're fighting about. Because if it's about what it is we're fighting about, then we're not fighting about it anymore. It's resolved. Reasonable people resolve every single dispute like that because it happens almost instantly. You parse out, you figure out, oh, this is where the disagreement is. If it's a disagreement that can't be resolved, in other words, I'm committed to this perspective and I'm committed to this perspective, and this is a fundamental axiom, and this is a fundamental axiom, and they clash. You can still adjudicate which axiom is better, stuff like that. There are occasions when different personal attainment desires mean that you have a point where you have to agree to disagree because there's no further ground to be made. But you can at least parse out exactly where it is the disagreement is, why the disagreement is, and why it is you can't conclude it, why it is you can't resolve it. So, to me, that's example of why it is the case that I'm always fighting about how we're fighting. Because if there's a physical thing that we have to decide, one of us is right and one of us is wrong. And if we engage in the process correctly, then we'll get the right answer. And I don't care if it's you or me who's right or wrong. I'm not married to whatever position I have. What I am married to is us both being fair about figuring out which position is right. Because otherwise, instead of doing the correct thing or making the correct decision or establishing the correct metaphysical status onto something, we'll end up doing it according to who's more whiny or something. So we don't want that. And as a consequence, that's why I don't care about the actual specifics of anything. I only care about the process because I'm extraordinarily metaphysically accountable. Why am I so metaphysically accountable? Because I'm extraordinarily physically unreliable and irresponsible and unprofessional. And so I have mastered this technique of learning exactly where the line is, at which point metaphysical accountability can no longer let me get away with something. And then there actually be physical accountability. And there has to be physical accountability to avoid that at all costs. I like things where I can fuck up and get away with providing only metaphysical solutions to it. Anyway, that's part one of this video series. That's going to be, I know the next part is going to be about how ENTPs express differently depending on a variety of things. And I have an idea about how I would love to do a protocol of ENTP subtypes and why they are the way they are. A lot of shit's falling into place from this one. It's pretty exciting metaphysically. Of course, nothing happened in the real world, but a shitload of stuff have happened this morning already. And I haven't really even talked to anybody at great length. So that's what it's like being a NE Dom who's super hardcore NE, is that I just don't exist in the physical world, basically. And it kind of sucks, but it's kind of cool, I guess. I don't know. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. And I love you. I've decided to start saying that at the end of my videos. I love you. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.